Is it worth the risk to keep on going?
Sure, to win. I mean, that's what we've always done. The money's never been a factor. We raced when we didn't have any.
Popularly known as the Intimidator, Dale Earnhardt Sr. really was the man on the asphalt. He had no equal. With 76 career wins, he carved his legacy with gold. He was more than just a driver. He was a symbol of grit, fearlessness, and talent. However, Dale Earnhardt passed away in a shocking turn of events. How did this symbol of asphalt royalty pass away, and what were the implications of his death? Join us as we uncover how Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s autopsy report revealed some sad details. The darkest nights, February 18, 2001 is, to this day, regarded as NASCAR's darkest day. It was the day that the sport lost one of its greatest and most respected drivers of all time, Dale Earnhardt. The 7-time NASCAR Cup champion, known as the Fearless Intimidator, passed away at the age of 49 after his famous Richard Childress Racing Chevrolet Monte Carlo crashed at Turn 4 on the last lap of the Daytona 500. His own team's cars, driven by good friend Michael Waltrip and his son Dale Earnhardt Jr., finished 1 and 2 on a day that should have been filled with immense joy. He was playing rear gunner to his Dale Earnhardt Incorporated team cars as they raced around the final lap of the race, blocking any late runs from the chasing pack. As the cars tore through turns 3 and 4 on that fateful final lap, Earnhardt maintained the strong-armed tactics that had become the trademark of his persona. As he threw his final block, Earnhardt's left rear corner tagged Sterling Marlin's right front fender, getting his car loose. Earnhardt battled for control, his car clipping the apron, which unsettled it still further, and so it began to spin clockwise, moving up the track and across the bows of the closely following Rusty Wallace and Ken Schrader. His right rear corner was struck by Schrader's left front, which made prominent the angle of Earnhardt's car before it nosed hard into the unprotected concrete. At first, it appeared to be just a regular NASCAR crash. At the time, the impact at this angle was devastating for the occupant. As his and Schrader's cars spun down the track in unison, Earnhardt's right rear wheel parted company. This was the first indicator of the violence that had shaken through the vehicle. Schrader, whose car hit the wall adjacent to Earnhardt's at much the same speed but at a far shallower angle, was completely unhurt. Medical crews were on the scene moments later, but despite their best efforts, there was little to be done but transfer Earnhardt to the ambulance and directly to the nearby Halifax Medical Center, where he was later pronounced dead. Earnhardt passed away as a result of a basilar skull ring fracture. 8 months prior to his accident, 3 other drivers had suffered the same injury and lost their lives. These 3 were Adam Petty, Kenny Irwin, and Tony Roper, Johns Hopkins. Medicine describes this injury as the most serious type of skull fracture and involves a break in the bone at the base of the skull. It often leads to major bleeding in that area. Other racing drivers to be killed by a similar injury were Roland Ratzenberger, Blaine Johnson, Blais One Alexander, and Gonzalo Rodriguez. In NASCAR's crash report, published in August 2001, they stated that Dale Earnhardt's death was most likely caused by a blow to the back of the head. Not from one single cause, but from a combination of unusual factors. These included the uncommon severity and trajectory of the car's impact with the wall, an immediately prior collision with Schrader's car that put him out of position, and a separation of the left lap belt under load that allowed greater motion within the car. Earnhardt's left side lap belt had separated in the impact, allowing his body to twist forward and to the right inside the car. His autopsy revealed the underside of his chin had impacted the steering wheel, and that he had suffered a second blow to the back of his head as he rebounded from the impact back into his seat, which displayed scuff marks on the head surround area. Earnhardt's open-faced helmet had rotated forwards when he hit the wall, exposing the back of his skull. He shunned any head and neck safety restraint, unlike some of the drivers in the field that day. His death sent shockwaves to lovers of the sport all around the world. Their beloved Earnhardt was gone forever. As a driver, few could compete with him behind the wheel. However, how did he achieve his legendary status behind the wheel? Who was the man behind the wheel? The brightest dawn, Ralph Dale Earnhardt was born on April 29, 1951, in Kannapolis, North Carolina. His father, Ralph Earnhardt, was a successful race car driver and renowned mechanic. From a young age, Dale had cultivated a love for automobiles. His mother, Martha Earnhardt, also worked as a waitress and clerk at a children's store. Born into a family of 5, his siblings included Kay and Kathy, Randy, and Danny. In the 9th grade, he made the decision to drop out of school, and he went through several jobs while attempting to get his own stock car racing career off the ground. Despite his father not wanting him to follow in his footsteps as a race driver, he eventually had no choice but to support his son. But unfortunately, Ralph never saw his son race at the pinnacle of the sport and died of a heart attack in 1973, at the age of 45. 2 years later, in May 1975, Dale made his debut and finished 22nd in the World 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway, kicking off an illustrious career behind the wheel. He eventually caught the attention of Rod Osterland, a racing sponsor based in California, and the driver was signed to his first full-time Winston Cup contract for the 1979 season. That year, he racked up his first win on the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, NASCAR circuit, at the Southeastern 500 in Bristol, Tennessee. By the end of the racing season, he had become the first driver to win over $200,000 in his rookie year. He was rewarded with NASCAR's prestigious Rookie of the Year honors. The next year proved to be even better for Earnhardt, as he won his first NASCAR season points championship, or Winston Cup championship, barely edging out the veteran driver Cale Yarborough to do so. With the win, he became the first driver to win Rookie of the Year and the points championship in back-to-back seasons. Not long after, Osterland sold his team to J.D. Stacy in 1981. Earnhardt signed on to race for driver-turned-owner Richard Childress. He spent the next 2 years with Bud Moore's team, but he reunited with Childress after the 1983 season, and his career took off. After winning 4 races in 1985, he recorded 5 wins and a second Winston Cup championship in 1986. The next year saw him secure his best results yet, as he won 11 races and a third championship, finishing in the top 5 in 21 out of 29 races. Despite his undeniable success, he quickly earned himself a reputation early on for recklessness. Nicknamed Ironhead and the Intimidator, he was prone to aggressively bumping other drivers out of the way in order to take the lead in a particularly close race. After a warning from the president of NASCAR in 1987, he cleaned up his act and began developing better relationships with other drivers on the circuit. His success on the track continued as he won his 4th Winston Cup championship in 1990, earning a then-record $3 million in winnings. In 1991, he took home yet another title. The streak was broken in 1992 when he finished a disappointing 12th in the standings. However, he was not one to be put down by losses, so he bounced back the following year to win a 6th championship, with a win at the AC Delco 500 in his home state of North Carolina. In 1994, he secured his 7th Winston Cup championship, tying the legendary Richard Petty for most career titles. For the 3rd time in 5 years, he topped the $3 million mark in earnings and had become the indisputable king of stock car racing. The records kept falling for Earnhardt throughout the 90s. Although he failed to win another points championship, in 1996, he became the 3rd driver to start 500 consecutive Winston Cup races. The following year, he broke the $30 million mark in career earnings, the most ever for a race car driver. The only major victory that had eluded Earnhardt up until that point was the crown jewel of stock car racing, the Daytona 500, held in Daytona, Florida. Although he had come close several times, his bid for victory was often derailed by mechanical failure, crashes, or some other bad luck. Earnhardt also survived a harrowing crash at the event in 1997, only to return in fine form in February 1998, when he won his first Daytona in 20 career starts, breaking a winless streak of 59 straight races. He finished 8th in points that season with no more wins, and went on to place 7th in 1999 with 3 race victories. Earnhardt left behind a robust legacy in the sport, one that might never be matched again. However, his biggest legacy might be the one brought about by his death, changing the landscape of NASCAR forever. How did he do that? In Death, a Hero's Legacy. The quiet after a bad NASCAR wreck is unnerving, terrifying even, if it lasts too long. The roar of the engines faded as cars rolled to a stop. Officials in the scoring tower, spotters on the roof, and writers in the press box watched the damaged car, hoping, praying, that the driver's side window net comes down. In living rooms across America, fans lean toward the TV, eyes glued. To the net, too. The world goes silent, or seems to at least, as Austin Dillon's car flew down the front stretch in 2015 at Daytona in one of the most frightening wrecks in NASCAR history. All he could hear were his own thoughts, telling himself that he was okay. The fact he was indeed fine was nothing short of stunning, considering his car flew over 2 lanes of traffic, slammed into the catch fence, and came to a stop on its hood. It was so terrifying that crew members from other teams ran out to the key car to see if he was okay. Auto Week put a photo of his ripped-to-pieces car on the cover with the headline, "How did Austin Dillon survive this?" The same question came up after Ryan Newman's horrific wreck at the end of the Daytona 500. One reason they both survived was that, over 2 decades ago, Dale Earnhardt didn't. Today, Steve O'Donnell is NASCAR's executive president. 2001, he worked in NASCAR's marketing department. He was in victory lane after the Daytona 500 that year, as Michael Waltrip celebrated the first Cup Series win of his career. As confetti flitted onto crewmen's shoulders and champagne soaked their hair, O'Donnell saw driver Kenny Schrader come into victory lane. Schrader, a talkative man with dancing eyes and a quick wit, looked stricken. He had been involved in a last lap wreck with Dale Earnhardt. After Schrader's car stopped, he climbed out, walked over to Earnhardt's car, looked in the driver's side window, and immediately waved for help. It would be years before he said so publicly, but he knew right away what the world would learn in a few hours. Earnhardt, the 7-time champion, was dead. Earnhardt's death was the 4th in less than a year across NASCAR's 3 national series. In 2000, Tony Roper, Adam Petty, and Kenny Irwin all died of the same injury as Earnhardt, basilar skull fractures. Because Earnhardt was a 7-time NASCAR champion and icon in and out of the sport, his death prompted a massive safety revolution that now permeates every corner of the sport. According to Kevin Harvick, the 2014 champion who replaced Earnhardt at Richard Childress Racing and now drives for Stewart-Haas Racing. Harvick emphasized that the impact Dale Earnhardt had on the safety of the sport after his death was far greater than what would have happened with anybody else. The safety revolution started immediately, and over 2 decades later, it still hasn't stopped. Andy Petrie, now the VP of competition at Richard Childress Racing, and who in 2001 owned a 2-car race team, said his cars became 75% safer the very next day after changes were made to the seats, headrests, and belts at Rockingham, the week after Earnhardt's death. For years to come, safety became a hotly debated topic. What should be done? How should it be done? When should it be done? Before Earnhardt's death, some in the sport were reluctant to seek or listen to outside advice on safety. Afterward, NASCAR began working with a variety of organizations on safety issues. Richard Childress noted that he believed it was the right thing to do, to get outside opinions and have other people look at the whole situation, although he believes that as terrible as it was, and despite the fact that they would never get over losing Dale Earnhardt, there was a lot that came out of it in terms of safety moving forward. The NASCAR Research and Development Center opened in suburban Charlotte in 2002, and the work done there has led the industry through a series of changes unprecedented in both scope and effectiveness. In the over 2 decades since Earnhardt died, nobody else has died in one of NASCAR's top 3 series, Cup, Xfinity, and Camping World Trucks. That's the legacy that Dale leaves, says Petrie, a former Earnhardt crew chief, friend, and business partner. In 2002, tracks began replacing concrete walls with energy-absorbing safer steel and foam energy reduction barriers. This upgrade was completed at all ovals by 2005 and is considered the most important development other than the hands device. A year later, the free pass rule was implemented. It froze the field the instant a caution came out, eliminating the previous practice of racing back to the start-finish line. The first driver a lap down is now given his or her lap back. By 2007, NASCAR required drivers to use a 6-point harness system. Once common sternum injuries virtually disappeared. Today, NASCAR requires at least a 7-point system and recommends a 9-point system, with each belt designed to catch the driver in a different kind of collision. That same year, the driver's seat was moved toward the center of the car, and energy-absorbing material was added to the driver's side door panel. The courage to race was once inextricably linked to the danger of it. To bristle at the danger was seen as a lack of courage. That attitude has been almost completely swept away in the 2 decades since. The danger of racing is still a large part of its appeal, but nobody scoffs at attempts to make the sport safer anymore. The change in culture and the advancements in safety happen together, though not necessarily at the same speed or at the same time. It happened in fits and starts as new advances were introduced, debated, and eventually adopted. Generally speaking, the safety changes came first, and the shift in culture followed. For example, some drivers initially resisted the mandate to wear the hands device, either because they didn't like wearing it, didn't believe it made a difference, or both. But today, nobody would go near a car without one. The free pass rule is another good example. At the time of its implementation, some drivers and fans criticized it as hokey and unnecessary, not real racing. But now, it seems archaic that any sanctioning body would allow drivers to race in the seconds immediately after a caution flag is thrown. The change in culture now permeates the entire sport. Drivers and executives talk about fear, danger, and safety in ways they never did a decade ago. Whereas early on in the revolution, safety innovations ran ahead of the culture. Today, the culture of safety drives innovation in pursuit of it. NASCAR has even experimented with putting load sensors in seat belts to gather real data in the case of hard hits. However, this effort remains limited to lab environments due to the problematic weight of sensors inside race cars, where every ounce matters. Under a pilot program through Wake Forest University, NASCAR has also sought ways to use mouthpieces with embedded sensors. This is nothing short of remarkable. The sensor is contained within the driver's body, a level of data never before available. With these new ways of collecting hard data, Padillak and his team now understand far more about what happens during a crash than they used to. This will allow them to devise even safer cars. According to Padillak, computer modeling is a major advancement, allowing them to dive deep into aspects they were once blind to. And the deeper they dive, the more they realize that when it comes to safety, they'll never reach the bottom because there isn't one. There is always new information, new technology, and new materials to explore. As O'Donnell put it, even when you think you've done all you can, you're not even close. The Intimidator, as he was popularly known, lived his life without fear. He made the racetracks his domain and died doing what he loved. His legacy, both as a driver and through the impact of his passing, has been etched into the annals of car racing forever, a legacy written in gold. What do you make of the tragic circumstances of Dale Earnhardt's death, and what impact do you think he had on the sport that claimed his life? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more, and be sure to click the next video showing on your screen. You'll enjoy it.